I'm Eric Arnold. I was a programmer I started on Red Faction PC, fresh out of college. I went to Michigan State University, majored in computer science. I helped found the Spartasoft group up there. It's a student organization that was people interested in making games. So we got people from game studios and different places to come in. We worked on doing game jams and building games ourselves. Got a lot of good experience, made a lot of good friends there. But yeah, so I got an internship at Volition between junior and senior year of college. Came home there in my hometown. I grew up in Champaign, Illinois, where their office is. So I just wandered in one day, burned a CD with all the games and stuff that I'd made on my own and with Spartasoft. Say, hey, you guys aren't advertising anything, but I really want to make games. Can I come do something or be an intern or like whatever? Just let me hang around. And didn't hear anything. The day before I was going back to school, I got a call from Mike Kulas, and he said, hey, we want to have you do an interview for an internship. It looks like you'd be a good fit here. And I was like, well, shoot, I'm leaving to go back to Michigan tomorrow. He's like, oh, that's fine. We'll just do it over the phone. So drove back up to school, had a phone call with, I think it was with Kulas himself, and just like answered random programming questions and talked through some stuff. And he's like, yeah, cool. Why don't you come be an intern? So came back from that year of school, moved home, and just started working on Red Faction PC. I was primarily doing work on the installer for it because obviously the main version was PlayStation 2. There wasn't an installer. You put the disc in and it runs, but the PC version, we needed an installer. So they gave it to the grunt on the team. Made me do the unglorious task of making what was it? It was one of the like wizard programs. Anyway, it was pretty boring making an installer. But I also got to do work on the editor, which was really cool, right? So like they already had an editor they were using to build stuff, but there were feature requests and bugs and things coming out of the team from building the whole game that they wanted to do more. And especially now that they're expanding out the multiplayer game, they wanted some extensions on that. So I got to work on the editor and help improve that so they can make cooler levels and better things for people to play. So yeah, I just, absolute lifelong dream. I got to get paid to go make games. I was in heaven. So from there, at the end of the summer, the vice president at the time, Philip Holt, came into the pit where I was sitting and said, hey, if you just want to not go back to school and just stay on here, we'll just hire you full time. I was like, well, I have 1 year left. It's my senior year. I don't have any actual requirements. I just have to take some classes. So it's all stuff that I want to take, not I have to. I'm going to go get my degree. I'll see you in May. So I finished my degree up, and then came back. And at that point, they were working on Red Faction 2. So I started working on that one. Red Faction to me is all about kind of the freedom of the player, the destruction system. So from as long as I can remember, I've loved taking things apart and breaking things and figuring out how they work. And so just like the physics of anything has always been extremely interesting. Physics was like hands down my favorite subject in school because we got to throw things out the window and time them and see how long it took to hit the ground and break and try to make better. So a game built around, I'm going to blow stuff up and create tunnels and make, modify the map, and especially in multiplayer, to what I want it to be. And I'm going to come up with my own new ways of doing something that the developers didn't think of. Like, that is beautiful to me. I love that. So that, like, more than anything is what Red Faction is to me. So giving the player the ability to come up with their own unique solutions to things in a way that no other game at the time, certainly, and even to this day, like the Red Faction franchise has been one of the most physically creative games that I have seen. So by the time I got there as an intern, the PlayStation version had shipped, and the PC, I don't remember how much of the team moved over and they were doing the PC port of it. They had it up and running, as like the single player game was up and running. I think multiplayer, because multiplayer was fairly different for PC. So they're still doing work on that and, trying to get as many players in as they could and solving all those problems. So like the PC version was fairly underway by the time I got there. And like I said, I was mostly focused on editor and installer stuff. So I wasn't dealing with direct gameplay or any of that at the time. But yeah, I got to go through those. I'm trying to remember when the launch party. I remember I came back for Christmas break in my senior year, and Kulas had invited me to come to the holiday party. Like every year they go to a local nice restaurant. Everybody puts on an actual button-down shirt instead of T-shirts, usually with their own game logos on them, and have a nice meal. You bring significant other if you have one, and go hang out and relax. So he invited me, even though I was just the intern, since I had the full-time job pending in May. They invited me to come to the party. They're like, sweet, I'll be home. I like food. I'll come here and drink and hang out with you guys. So I showed up and was talking to people, and they're like, oh, what are you working on? I was like, I just finished up my finals and working on homework. And they're like, wait, what? You mean you don't still work here? It's like, no, I was an intern. Like I went back to school. I'm just here on break. I'll be back in May, but no, I don't work here right now. Like they're okay, but when in May? Like the 1st of May or like the end of May, because we have a lot of bugs and we're trying to figure out what systems, who's going to own what, and like, when are you going to be here? Like they're really interested in it. As soon as I can be put to work, okay, throw a step at this guy. I don't remember how many people were on the RFPC team, but Red Faction 2 was, I think, 8 programmers total. So yeah, like one person's fairly substantial part of that. I heard some stories and saw some concept art. Parker was originally like a teenager and had like a long bandana and was kind of a punk. But yeah, no, but I don't have a whole lot of insight there. Transition was before me. I mean, the story was interesting, but like you have a giant rock snake thing. Like, oh, like okay, it doesn't super make sense to me, but whatever. Like the ability I can go and there's a locked door. Okay, I've got a rocket launcher. I'm just going to dig a tunnel and go around it. That was mind blowing to me. Or you come out and you can see down and there's a convoy of enemies and a big truck going across a bridge, and you just blow the bridge out and the whole thing, all the guys go away. Like that was so cool. I mean, the editor was fairly fully featured. It was a custom in-house editor. You're basically, if I remember right, the world was essentially a complete solid block, and you were just carving space out of it, because then when you go to geo-mod, you're digging into solid. So it made sense to create the levels by essentially doing the same thing with different kind of brushes and that. So like the editor was fully functional. They built the PS2 game with it. I was more extending functionality, adding new features, and like making more creative ways or complicated ways that you could build levels or cut pieces out or texture them, that kind of thing. And then fixing bugs. It's an in-house tool. There was still problems and issues that people had to work around, and making it faster, or maybe relaxing some restrictions. That the PS2 was very constrained on memory. Now that we're on PC, we can do things that are bigger, more complicated, whatever. So you got to adjust the editor to allow that. Because it was one of the things in tools in games, especially if you're working on a console game, the tool needs to at least know about the limitations of the system and stop the artist from blowing it. Like one of the big things back then was just texture memory size. And we had like a little decal on the butt of a gun or something. And it was a 512 image, I think, which today it's not that big. But back then you're like, are you kidding me? Like this is massive. Our main character doesn't have a dedicated 512. And you did that for a little decal. So stuff like that, like just make sure, okay, you can make your source art, whatever resolution you want, but it needs to get packed down and compressed and all that. And have reports on, okay, this thing is way over budget, and make it easy for programmers or hopefully the artists themselves to see it and fix it before it even makes it into the pipeline. Yeah, it was very purpose built for what we needed. I believe it came kind of like the game itself came from Descent, like from their editor. They just kept rolling the game forward, roll the editor forward. But yeah, everything really at Volition in general was all custom built for the game. So they went, I mean, the game went from Descent to Red Faction, which had some amount of similarities. But if you look at the history of Volition, they also made Summoner at the time, which are like completely different, you know, third person role playing action game. There were some unreleased games that they tried that were racing games. There was like a tube racer, kind of like an F-Zero style game that never went. Like they were kind of all over the place, and so every game, every tool was just custom built for what they were trying to make. Most of them were very tech driven. I think Kulas being a programmer himself, and starting with Descent, which was, I believe, like the first texture mapped multiplayer online game. They had a big history of being tech driven. Red Faction certainly was very heavily tech driven. You know, nobody had done the kind of the geo-mod style gameplay and incorporating that. So they were very technically capable in-house. So I think they just kind of naturally, well, we could get Unreal, or we could get this other engine, or we could get this off-the-shelf tool or something, but that's not quite what we want to do, or, you know, we want to go completely off into left field, so we'll just build it ourselves because we can. So there are benefits to that, in that you can do weird, wacky things that Unreal doesn't do, and there's drawbacks of now you have to dedicate manpower to building this editor or this tool chain or whatever it is, or the engine itself, when you could be, those people could be doing something else. So it's a balancing act. I think ultimately it proved that they made good decisions, because they made a lot of really great games that couldn't have been made on anything else. Even as late as going from the Red Faction titles and Saints Row titles to Agents of Mayhem, which was the last game I worked on, we evaluated Unreal 3, and at the time Unreal 4 was just in early beta, and like it still didn't do what we wanted to make open world games, to do the things we wanted to do as a company that we felt like we're really good at this. At this point, we've, you know, honed our skills. The off-the-shelf things just, it didn't work for us. And I think that was just, it was part of the culture from the time that I got there, and even well before that, until today. Like they're still running on a custom engine. They have a custom editor, and it is really powerful and really refined for what they're doing. So there's a lot of benefit there once people get in and, you know, learn how to use it well. I think there's definitely, beyond the technical cost of it, there's an artistic cost of, you have bring people in. I know Unreal Editor, okay, well, this is kind of like it in some respects, but you're gonna have to ramp up and learn the intricacies and kind of quirks of our editor and our system, and it's different than something else you may have worked on before. I do vaguely remember putting work into making the editor so that people not inside Volition could use it. Because going into the PC version, they wanted to open it up to outside people to be able to use. And there was, you know, some things that were custom built to our tool chain or required different pieces of it, and they wanted to allow the community to be able to build maps and use it. Yeah, for the PC version, that was a pretty high priority. Everybody understood that that was important. I mean, guys in the company would stay late and play other multiplayer games on PC, you know, or just LAN games. And so making the PC multiplayer game really full featured and be able to do mods and open to the community was really important to the team. That was ultimately really the kind of the big selling point of doing the PC port and the Mac port. I think Hendrix just, I don't know, like the missions where you have to escort him around, I just wanted to shoot him in the face, but for some reason it made him endearing to me because he's such a doofus. I'm like, can't you do this on your own? Got monsters and rock snakes hunting me down, but no, I have to drag your ass around from office to office and keep you safe. Oh yeah, I've played through I think pretty much every game I've ever worked on. I really enjoyed Red Faction. I'm honestly not a big first-person shooter guy. Like I at the time I played all Dooms and Star Wars first-person shooters and most of the big ones, but like I'm certainly not a big competitive player. When we played in the office, I got my ass handed to me all the time. But I really enjoyed the single player game and played through the whole thing. I thought it was a lot of fun. Multiplayer on the PC port was the main focus, and like single player was pretty much straight port. But they intentionally put effort into multiplayer to make it really, really good, really stand out, and be like, this is why you buy the PC version of the game because it has outstanding multiplayer. I don't think. I mean, I'm an intern. At the time I wasn't involved in any high profile conversations, but I never heard any rumblings about trying to separate them. No, I don't know that like the single player on its own when there's already console version didn't seem like that would really add much value. I mean, multiplayer probably would have been okay by itself, but adding the single player is not that much effort comparatively. So I might as well put them all together. Yeah, the vehicles were the big one. I don't remember. I think there's a little bit of talk about bots, but really the focus for PC multiplayer was more get as many humans in there as possible because that's what the real fun was. Bots aren't that interesting, and honestly, like bots are a lot harder when the environment's so dynamic. Getting them to not be complete brain dead idiots is really difficult. But yeah, vehicles definitely were the big one that people wanted to get in the game, but it's too hard to synchronize and make those work so that they were fun and balanced well. I don't know of any. There may well have been design discussions on new game modes that focused on destruction, but yeah, I don't remember hearing anything. I don't remember any like play testing or anything. Like, oh, we had this great idea, but we couldn't quite get it to pan out, and it's time to ship, so we got to just cut it off. I think at the time it was just these are the game modes that multiplayer shooters have. We're going to put these in, and kind of left it at that. I don't remember any like particular ones. I think we rotated them pretty regularly, but I mean, just in general, even people who weren't on the Red Faction team, like everybody in the studio just loved playing multiplayer together, and there's lots of yelling and screaming down the hallways. So like it was super fun, but not something that like we all have to play this one particular map or this one particular mode. Get rotated fairly frequently. Yeah, I myself very little. I played a couple games, but like I said, I'm terrible and just got my butt kicked. So other than hey, I whooped up on a dev, like I don't know how much fun I would add to the community game. But like I enjoy it. I especially if I can if there's a way to chat and interact with people. I really enjoyed people that were having a lot of fun with something I made. Like any developer will tell you that is what we love. We love seeing other people enjoy what we make. But yeah, I mean, there were lots of other people who were more heavily involved in the community. I don't think at the time they had somebody dedicated to that at the studio. You know, more recently we've had community managers and people who are kind of facilitating that more. But like as a studio, we've done lots of different come play with the devs nights where we'll set up a time and people can join in games and we'll try to play with people. I don't think so. Like I said, I mean, for me at least, the geo-mod stuff that is what makes it so special, and I think that rightfully was the focus of what people loved about it. So yeah, I can't think of something that really was unappreciated. I will say that the physics engine was custom done in house as much everything was. So it wasn't like they took an off-the-shelf physics engine and, something that already did this and put it into a game. They wrote everything, including, player locomotion and the vehicle system and everything else, which what was it? The acronym for the system, I think, was ASS. It was like Advanced Simulation System, just like on purpose because we're all children and saying bad words is funny. But so yeah, it was the ASS system was a custom in-house physics engine that drove the geo-mods and everything that interacted with it. So I think that maybe is unappreciated or unknown. That was like a guy that wrote the whole system. I did not realize that the community was still going. I knew that there was a decent hardcore following a while ago, but it kind of fallen off my radar. So I was very, very surprised when I got an email saying that you guys were trying to dig up some facts and do a kind of 20-year look back at it. That's really cool. I'm pretty, like, if my memory serves, and I've had lots of head trauma in my life, so my memory's flaky, but I think our best QA guys, their speed runs were like just under 2 hours. I don't know. I think just the creativity of it. I think kind of like how Minecraft blew up because you can build things and make whatever you want out of a map. I mean, give people the tools to build the levels and then give players the ability to take those levels and customize them. Like, people love customizing stuff just in general. They love the visceral action of, I shot a rocket at this thing and now there's a hole in it and I can, make more holes, and I can, like, all the options are endless, really. Like, so many games, I've done all the things, I've learned all the ways to do stuff. Like, there's nothing else. But the Red Faction series has been around. There's always a new way to do something, or I got this great idea for a new level that's going to work really well with this weapon, or this mechanic, or whatever. Like, the creativity of it, I think, is what gives it such long legs. THQ handled a lot of, they're the publisher, so they handled a lot of marketing and that end of things. As I said, Volition did not have any community managers or dedicated people. So internally, I don't believe we had a ton of plans of doing, community management. There probably were plans of doing like a map pack or something if the game does well, and we can release some more content for it. But beyond that, I don't think, at least at Volition, we had a lot of plans. At THQ, who knows what their plans were. Given that the PS2 version already came out and was doing very well, I expected that the PC version would do well, as kind of following suit, especially because, like, I've played the multiplayer game and it was hella fun. So, like, this is not something that's difficult to grasp. It's like, you get in, you blow stuff up. Like, people understand explosions. So yeah, I thought it would do well, and it did well. And I don't know. There's a lot of times in games where you put something out, you've worked on it for a long time, you're really proud of it, you understand what makes it special or fun or whatever, but like, you don't know if that's going to come across. I feel like Red Faction is just something that it doesn't require a lot of explanations or any like special hand holding. Just like, people get it and it feels good. So I think that's why it did well. The PC, console, I think it was really more of a surprise that the console version did well. Trying to do first person shooter on console, with the controller, is like, feels like a less good fit to me than mouse and keyboard. But I think they did a really good job with the game. So yeah. Ultimately, it's just the resources. Like, there will pretty much always be bugs. So there's no point where any game is completely bug free. So trying to get there is foolish. Yeah, like, it's just try to fix the most egregious things that are causing problems. I don't remember at the time, like, by that point I was back in college. I don't know what the pressures were internally. I'm sure they were moving on to either Red Faction 2 or I think Summoner 2 was going at that time. Like, it was a very small studio and they were doing 2 different games at one time. So they kind of rolling people from one to the other as development ramped up on one and wrapped up on the other one. They were trying to stagger development cycles, but like you're always strapped for resources. So trying to support something after the fact, even, there is a community, but there's not a revenue stream. So trying to get the publisher to say, hey, you can allocate headcount to supporting this thing that isn't really bringing in more revenue at that point is a hard argument. I'm sure like you can always do a better job of messaging and letting the community know, hey, sorry, but we don't have time to do more. But yeah, ultimately it's just, there's only so many people and so many hours in the day to put towards projects, and you got to try to make them the best use of what you've got. So on Red Faction 2, I was primarily on weapons. So just programming the physics of them. Like there was, I wonder if I actually made it in it. Was there a grenade launcher gun where you could target with an arc? So I remember working on that for a long time. I don't remember if it actually made it in the game. There was a targeting reticle, and I would figure out, okay, based on the the trajectory of it and how far away it is, it would kind of paint a target where you were going to hit. So you would have to aim it up to get it to where you wanted to go, which was fun for me because I get to program physics into things. But I think it ended up being, it was too hard to use it effectively because like you'd have to aim up so high. Now you can't see what you're going to hit. But yeah, I was mostly doing weapon gameplay related stuff on RF2. Don't remember why that decision was made. I don't understand a lot of the decisions that were made on RF2, honestly. Like, it seemed like a weird departure of what worked from Red Faction 1. Like, there were inconsistencies on what you could blow up and what you couldn't. I remember, like, right at the beginning of the game, you're walking down a hallway, and this panel could not be blown up, but the panel right past it with the same texture on it, you could blow up, and there was a secret back there. And I'm like, what? It didn't make any sense to me. So I was frustrated by a fair number of choices on that game. What we were hoping it would be or what we expected it would be. You always hope that people will love the game, but I don't know that we expected that people would love the game. I think internally, a decent amount of people were aware that there were some big issues with that one. I don't want to totally just knock on the game. Like there were definitely some good things about it, but there were some flaws for sure that even internally, just I mean, I don't get it. Yeah, it did. It came out pretty quick, which I think was part of it. Like they were trying to ride Red Faction 1 was successful. Let's do another one and kind of keep on that momentum, which I get. But the part I don't get, like it just seems like they've moved away from the focuses around destruction and using that as a tool, and it just became kind of this effect that like it's not really that important. It's not the focus of the game. Certainly not for single player anyway. And like we learned all this stuff on the first game. Why don't we lean in harder on that instead of run away from it? You can put a cloud of smoke and throw some chunks out. You don't need a whole system for it. But I don't know. I think part of it is probably they didn't want it to be just you're underground again, you're in a cave, so they wanted it to be above ground, but then you can't, at the time you couldn't take down the entire building, so they had to make just parts of it destroyable. Adding actual destruction to any game is more complicated than anybody would guess. Like there's so like even audio, it should change. Like the sounds that a gun or a person make will be different if there's a giant gaping hole in the wall or there's not. And so you can't pre-compute much of anything. Like at the time, light maps were, how you did lighting. You can't do that. the geometry is always changing. Like where lights are coming from is always changing. So there's just like, then the AI, well, this guy, there's a wall in front of him, so he can't see me. Oh, I blew a hole in it. Now he should react and shoot at me or try to jump through the hole, or like, try to be believable. That's really hard when the level is constantly changing and there's no guarantee of what's there or not, or like how he can move through a space or what he can see. You're having to constantly do calculations to update that, when other games don't have any of these problems. They can just focus on whatever, they're simple mechanics. But destruction just throws a giant monkey wrench in every single system in a game. No, I think it was just short development cycle. They were trying to get it out quick. I don't remember why there wasn't multiplayer. Yes, I started working on Red Faction 3. Like, there was, I don't remember, I mean, a handful of us were doing prototypes and stuff. It was going back towards Red Faction 1. The big thing was we were going to be at least somewhat above ground with vehicles. So I was trying to get vehicles that could cover kind of uneven terrain, like, rolling hills and stuff, but like very kind of sandy. Still, I think it was back on Mars, that kind of environment. So yeah, we started working on that. And then Red Faction 2 put a giant bullet in that one because it did not do nearly as well as expected. So that project was put on the shelf. I'm trying to think what I went to from there. I remember if that's when Punisher came about. I think so. I think once they realized, oops, we don't have Red Faction 3 to roll people onto after whatever maybe that was Summer or 2. But like they had a slot in their production schedule of, we need a game here. So we went through a couple weeks of small teams got together and just came up with ideas. And then everybody pitched their ideas to, Kulas and Philip Holt. And that's where the idea of Punisher came from, because we had Frank Marquardt, was super big comic book fan. I think it was his team that had the Punisher idea as like a high concept. And then they took a couple mechanics from some of the other pitches that were given, and the Punisher game was born out of that. And then, we obviously had to talk to THQ, and it just so happened that I think they already had the license for Punisher somehow. So it just worked out well that we could do that. And so some of the tech and like physics stuff that I had started doing for Red Faction 3 then got morphed and turned into the Punisher game. This was still on PlayStation 2. It wasn't the full. What became Red Faction Guerrilla came much later. I don't remember any details in the story. We didn't work on that for a super long time. I doubt that there was any high, like detailed storyline. I'm sure they had a rough sketch out of something, but I can't remember what it was. Yes, yeah. The Red Faction and Summoner initially started from the same thing. Summoner was first, right? So that was their first console game. So they took that code base and then beat the hell out of it and made the Red Faction code base. But from that point, they lived on as separate lines, and they would, sometimes steal code from each other, or oops, we found a bug down in the math system and but you have to hand apply it to both of them because there was no real common core at that point. And it went on that way for quite a while until late into Volition's history. We finally did get a common engine group put together. And so now there's a single code base for at least the engine part of it, and then build the game on top of it. But for a long time, they had essentially two code bases. They shared a distant relative, but they had gone off in their own kind of directions. Yeah, there were attempts to make a CTG, core technology group. There were attempts to make a core group to build, a common engine multiple times, and it would start for a while and then it would fail, and start for a while and then it would fail, because there was always just the pressure of, well, this code base already does what we want for this game, and this one does something else because we're doing a different game. Like, why are you trying to pull together? It's a lot of work when at the end of the day, people they didn't see the value of it. So when CTG finally did work, I got to be part of that. I was one of the architects on the CTG engine, and it was partly, we're going to a new console generation at the time. We're going to have to revamp things anyway. By that point, we had fairly established that we're going to make open world games. Whereas in the beginning, I said basically every game, unless it was a direct sequel, was like in a different genre completely. And so it didn't make as much sense to have a common code base. Everyone was doing something different, and they were always trying to push technology in some way. So they wanted it very customized to the game. By this point, we're focused on open world. Open world is basically the hardest version of any game you can make. So if it can do open world, it could do something else if we wanted to anyway. So then we got support to try yet again to make this core group, and it finally did work. We had, we took the editor, I think we took it from Saints Row at that point, because even the editors were their own thing. Like, there was a separate code base for each editor for the different game lines. But we have an established editor from Saints Row 3 at the time. Like, it was fairly robust. It had lots of great features. So took that as a core and then built on it. But yeah, we got a fairly big group. I think it was like 30 or 50 programmers maybe at the peak on the core technology group that were, just bring pieces over, steal things from past code bases or the different editor lines and get them all plugged together the right way and build a really solid foundation. And I mean, if you're going to stick with custom in-house engine versus going with Unreal or something off the shelf, I think it was a really smart move, because the code base when I left was just like, it was spot on. Like, the engine was great, the editor was great. You could build damn near anything on top of it, and it was going to run well. That was a fun time. It was very interesting to be part of. I'm building an engine for, at the time, like bleeding edge open world games. That was a really cool challenge. The goal also, I mean, we're owned by THQ. I think it was still THQ at the time. That was around the time that THQ went under and Koch Media bought us. But anyway, like, we were always part of a larger publisher. There were other studios that were doing at least somewhat similar things somewhere. So the idea was we were going to build an engine that then can be used by other studios. So instead of them paying $1 million, $2 million, whatever the licensing fee for Unreal was per SKU, they can use our stuff. It's effectively free, and we have a lot easier time customizing it and supporting it and whatever. A lot of it has to do with the resources you have and the abstraction that you can afford. Like, when I started doing things, there were still a lot of people like down in assembly doing like programming in assembly, and certainly debug. I had to dive down into assembly to debug things quite often. Whereas now, like, I can't remember the last time I looked at assembly anymore. Like, I'm writing stuff in standard template libraries and like, here's a vector and I'm going to allocate new stuff on the fly. I'm like, you couldn't do that. You had to pre-allocate and like account for every single byte that you had available. Now you're like, man, I don't care. I'm gonna allocate this 2 gig texture in VRAM or throw it on the GPU. Like, you don't care. You can do so much more without, I'm like, oh well, I've got 5,000 of these things. Well, I'll allocate 10,000 and just call it done. Like, it was the PS2. I think it was 32 megs of memory total for code and textures and meshes and everything. Like, thing. So just the restrictions that you had made it super difficult to get everything you wanted in there and on the screen at least 30 times a second. So that's the biggest difference. I mean, in some ways it is a benefit. I have seen plenty of times where you give somebody no limits, no restrictions, and they just kind of get paralyzed. What you say, nope, this is the tiny little box you have to go in, and they come up with these super creative solutions to it because they don't have to worry about everything. Like, this is my problem space. It's this big. I can only fit something in here. And for some reason, that makes people almost more creative. Instead of like, you could do anything you want ever and have all the memory you want. And like, then people get sloppy and it slows things down. So, I mean, there is definitely, I'm sure some just like rose-colored glasses of, if I actually had to go back and do it, I would complain and bitch and whine because I have these restrictions again. But there are definitely benefits to that as well that I think are lost in current development. To me, I was just like in this glow of, I can't believe I'm getting paid to work on video games. Because since I think it was second grade, I can remember going to my friend's house, and on paper we were hand drawing out levels to this made up game, and we were going to send them into Atari, and they were going to make this game because they make games that kids send in random pictures of. I don't know. We thought it was a great idea. Like, you could go here and get the sword and do this thing. But like, I loved, as soon as I saw video games, I loved them and just wanted to make them somehow. And I didn't know how that was at the time. So yeah, like then I think it was about fourth grade, I finally got to go to a Saturday morning, learn how to program class at community college. And I realized, oh, this is how things are done. Like, there's computers, and you can tell computers what to do. That, like, my mind exploded. So from that point on, I just taught myself how to do anything I could. I bought books and just messed around in the computer at home. Luckily, my dad had a computer from work, and he, for some reason, let me touch it. I don't know. That was a terrible idea. I don't let my kids touch my computer. But like, I have loved making things on the computer, and specifically making games. I would program my own games. There was something called Click and Play back when I was in probably middle school, early high school, that is effectively what Unity is now. There was lots of visual scripting, and you could just like drag and drop things and click on a sprite and say, when this thing touches this thing, do event. So like, it was fairly simple, but like, you could do some cool stuff without diving in and programming a full engine. Like, I would go home and make games on there and bring it on a floppy disk to school and share it with my friends. Hey, play this game. Tell me what you think, and go back, do some more stuff. So like, the fact that I'm not even out of college and I'm getting paid dollar bills to make games, like, I was just kind of in shock the whole time I was there. Not like a cool game memory, I will say a very vivid memory of my time as intern and starting in games. So I moved home from college and went and bought a new bike because I had been riding on the same bike that I had since middle school. And the first night I took it out for a ride to say, like, all right, I got a new bike. Let's see how I can, how well this thing rides compared to my old one. Somebody came and turned left in front of me while I was going down a sidewalk, and I just jammed the brakes on because I had been on my old Huffy bike from middle school, had no brakes left. And so I'm used to death grip to get the thing to stop. Well, no, this thing's brand new and just like instant locks up the wheels. And I went flying over the handlebars and crashed into the pavement, ripped off the top of my left index finger, just blood all over my hand, tore up my hip. My bike was actually fine. It had like a small scuff on the seat, but it was completely upside down. And like the person just kept going. I don't know, they just didn't see me at all, but like, nobody stopped. So I'm here bleeding all over myself on the side of the road. My bike's a mess. I'm trying to figure out, like, what do I do? There was a church right there that I could hear noise coming out of. So I went into the church and started yelling, somebody help me, I'm bleeding. And somebody like comes out in the hallway, like, oh my gosh. So they call, my dad comes, picks me up, go to the hospital, get patched up. And then like the next day I show up to work. Hey guys, I broke myself. I had to learn how to type like this with 9 fingers, and I had to keep my finger above my heart because otherwise the pain was unbearable, like having a heartbeat in your finger when it's all ripped to shreds. So most of the summer as an intern, I was slouched down in my chair typing with 9 fingers, and I still loved it. And I spent the next 15 years working at this company making more games because it's so much fun. So if that doesn't tell you I love my job, I don't know what does. Obviously, I enjoyed it. I love the people there more than anything. They had really great people, made a lot of friends. I'm still great friends with a lot of the people who are there. Some of the people have moved on. Some people have moved on with me, and I keep stealing them and bringing them to the new places I work. But yeah, there's great people, great opportunities, and really fun problems to solve. As a programmer, I think it was an ideal studio for me because they focused on technically hard problems that other people aren't doing, kind of first and foremost. So like I get to do what I want to do. Like my Red Faction Guerrilla was absolutely hands down my favorite project because I got to do destruction. Like I come in, I blow building up, I go home. I come in, I blow building up, I go home. I got to refine this system that was like my dream thing. Like I loved physics my whole life, and now I get to build a physical simulation of taking down an 8-story building with a sledgehammer, and you're going to pay me money to do this. Like, what? That was just a beautiful thing to me. So like Red Faction Guerrilla took 5 years, so my favorite Red Faction story outside of the game itself, Dave Baranek, who was a brilliant guy who wrote the initial like proof of concept of destruction, and then for some reason let me take it over when I had honestly no business doing it. I hadn't done anything that complicated yet. I was still fairly new at the time. And he's like, you can either do destruction or you can do AI. And I was like, that's a stupid question. I don't blow things up. So anyway, towards the beginning of that game, his younger brother came to visit University of Illinois and like came into the studio. Hey everybody, I'm Dave's brother. Hi. Then he came back into the studio and said, hey everybody, I just graduated from U of I. I was like, wait a minute, we haven't even finished one game and you finished your entire college career? Like, what the hell? But the game was just so hard, and we had to keep kind of rebooting and relearning how to build a game that was that much destruction, and that, you know, like we'd made Red Faction 1, but having it above ground and you can, you know, basically crumble things into cinder blocks was very different and had its own new challenges. Like it took basically getting a college degree to make this game, but that's why I loved it so much. It was just such a hard problem. And even so, that game, we did use Havoc physics for the simulation, rigid body simulation. They didn't have anything in destruction itself at the time. And not only did they not have it, when Dave asked them about it, they said, yeah, don't do that. Our system can't handle it. Like straight up, it will not, the performance, it won't be like you'll get a slideshow. And Dave's like, nah, we're going to do it anyway. So fast forward towards, I don't know if we had shipped Red Faction or if it was right towards the end, but I went out to, I think it was GDC to do a talk on it. And I went out to dinner with the Havoc guys. And like, I worked more with the Havoc devs than I worked with people at Volition for this 5-year span of Red Faction Guerrilla. Like on a day-to-day basis, there were literally people had been at the company for 3 years. I didn't know their name. One guy, we were out playing Ultimate Frisbee. I was like, hey, are you new here? Like, I'm Eric. I'm the destruction guy in Red Faction. He's like, oh, I've been on Saints Row for 3 years. I do AI. So it was like, it was a programmer. Like, it's not even like some artist or somebody that I have no business talking to. It was a programmer who'd been there for 3 years, and I didn't know him because I just sit in my corner and I blow things up. And that was it. Anyway, so I go out and I'm hanging out with these Havoc guys that I've become good friends with. I work with them very closely, and they're like, hey, I want to introduce you to this other guy at Havoc who like wasn't on our project or whatever. And they're like, hey, this is Eric. He did the destruction of Red Faction. And the guy goes, you did that? I can't believe you guys did that. That's so impressive. And I was like, oh, thanks. What do you do? He's like, oh, I write the core physics solver. It's like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, the guy writing the core physics rigid body solver at Havoc is impressed that, we pulled this off, which, I mean, honestly, like, to this day, somebody show me a game that had more complex and interactive destruction in it, and I would be impressed. But like, I dug in hard on that game. I loved every bit of developing it. So then, fast forward even farther, I took a break from games for a while after the Core Technology Group stuff and Agents of Mayhem. I took a job doing web-based software for farmers because, that's the obvious progression going from games. The next thing is you write farm software that they can do on a web page in their tractor. I don't know. I just needed something new at the time, and it was fun. But while I was doing that, I got contacted by NVIDIA out of the blue, said, "Hey, did you do destruction on Red Faction, Guerrilla?" I was like, "Yeah, that was me." "Okay, well, we want to do destruction in our stuff, and this guy over in Zurich wants you to come interview." I was like, what? So I was like, I mean, I'll talk to anybody about destruction just because I love it, but I don't know what you're talking about. So talked to him, and it turns out he was the guy who essentially invented what is now PhysX for NVIDIA. And they're building this new Omniverse thing that I hadn't heard of at the time, like giant editor that has simulation in it, and they wanted to add destruction. So I got pulled in to doing that because, a decade or more, I forget at the time, but anyway, because I did what I did on Red Faction, I now work at NVIDIA trying to outdo myself on new hardware. So now, like, to your point of it used to be assembly, well, now I have a 3080, RTX card. Well, what can you do with that? So I'm trying to out destruction myself again. I still play games. I've got 2 kids now, so I certainly don't play as much as I used to. I enjoy games that have destruction in them, but I get frustrated a lot of times because you can't do as much or as big or whatever. I haven't played ones that are focused on it as much as I felt like the Red Faction games were, which is a lot of what I enjoyed about it. Like, one of my favorite destruction memories on Red Faction was just, I was standing at a desk talking to another programmer, and he was kind of absent-mindedly just playing the game while we were chatting. And there was one of the EDF guys standing there shooting at him. He's driving a pickup truck and fishtails it. The back end of the truck hits the guy. He ragdolls, flies across, hits a building, and busts a hole in the wall. And then apparently it didn't kill him. He got up and started firing from inside of the building. And I was like, this is like, nothing about this was scripted. This is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in a game I've played ever. And it's just, you're absent-mindedly just twiddling around while we're talking. Like, moments like that are what make the game so special to me. I didn't feel like Red Faction Guerrilla was too hard. We got a lot of feedback that it was. I think it's so difficult to play test your own game and balance it because you're in it every single day. Like, it's really difficult to be objective. I think later on, I don't even remember if we had it at the time, but like, we eventually had 2 people dedicated to play test and play balance that would bring outside people in, and they would record them, and they even had like eye trackers to see where the people were focused on the screen. And we could sit there like, is this UI element or this pop-up, is it doing what it's supposed to? Or are people ignoring it and they don't know how to play the game because we're just not putting the information in the right spot? Or like, what's going wrong? Is it too hard? Is it too easy? My favorite playtest story, we had a guy that came in, played the game, and they're just asking him questions about, did you like it? Did you do this? Like, what would you do better? And the guy was like on camera saying, I didn't really like it. I didn't think the destruction was that good. Like, he was ragging on the game the whole time. But when you watch the video in the background on the TV, he's still there with the sledgehammer going through and like beating out every single wall, knocking down everything. Like, you don't like it, but you can't stop playing it. Like, what? It does not match, man. Like, come on. If you can't put the controller down, you obviously do like it. Multiplayer in RFG, I thought was outstanding. I think partly because they did focus on destruction and making it unique. I don't know how widely it's known. The repair in RFG multiplayer, that was not a planned thing. That was one designer came basically after single player had finished. You're like, hey, you know what'd be really cool? If we had a power up that you could like repair things and they would go back and like grow out of the ground. And we're like, what in the blue hell are you talking about, man? Like repair? That's ridiculous. And then we did it. So the other part was originally destruction was going to be completely kneecapped in multiplayer. Every multiplayer building was going to have an indestructible skeleton. So like if you had like a hut, the wall, you could blow holes in the walls, but you couldn't collapse the whole thing. Because when we started doing multiplayer and limitations again of largely console, we thought there's no way we're going to be able to synchronize the destruction and make it basically deterministic across boxes so that everybody sees the same thing and anything that's big enough to be impactful matches across all these boxes. And so like the designers went like, okay, we agree. We're going to put indestructible skeletons and everything. And we started trying it. And we're like, this just is not good. Like it doesn't feel right. Like it's not the destruction that you have in single player. So like it's a letdown. So I went off and was like, all right, we got to figure out how to do this. And I came up with a scheme of being able to send a small amount of data across the system. Like one system would do the destruction. Everybody else would run the stress simulation and play effects. So you could hear creaking noises and you could see dust falling when stuff's getting weak. So that you feel like it's going to come down. But one of the boxes, whoever is the server basically, was doing the actual simulation. And when it decided, okay, here's the result of the simulation, it would compress that down and send it out. And it could be applied fast enough that the same thing would happen on all the boxes. And if it's a big enough piece, it'll fall down and we will synchronize that across the network. And we just determined, all right, these pieces are small enough. If it's basically a single chunk, we're not going to worry about it. We'll try to send it out in the same rough direction, but like they won't even impact players. And, you can't be killed by this because it's not synchronized. But that allowed us to get the number of objects that we cared about low enough that we could synchronize those. And we were able to deterministically apply destruction events across the network. And so then we could do full-on destruction. But once again, the part that was missing was vehicles. And yes, we did try and try and try. I don't remember how many different, like, well, what if we did it this way? And like, we would project ahead of the vehicle and do the damage events before the vehicle actually hit it. So by the time you got there, the pieces would kind of burst and fly away. Well, then if you turned, you could kind of skim by a wall and it would fall apart, but you never actually touched it. But if you did it where you don't do the destruction until you hit it, since only one of the machines was actually doing destruction, you would have to send the event and get it back and apply it. And by then the vehicle has bounced off. And then like a couple frames later, the wall falls apart and like, oh, that sucks too. So that was the one thing that couldn't figure that one out. We got actual multiplayer destruction. We got a freaking repair gun at the last damn minute. Vehicles, that one, I couldn't beat that one. That still kind of irks me to this day. Like I really wanted to get it because the vehicles felt so good. And like, I don't know, just any problem that I can't tackle that sticks with me, keeps me going. My closing thing. One of the guys at Volition has a spreadsheet of people who work there, specifically when they leave. And then in the column next to it is when they come back. It's like Volition being a V, there's a joke that it's the Volition boomerang, because when you leave, you go out and then you circle around and you end up back there. Like it was ridiculous. Some guys, I think the lead was somebody left like 3 times and kept coming back, like over and over and over again. So like Mark Allender left for a while and was like working with, I think Sid Meier or somebody for his studio, was working remotely. Well, he's back there now. I think Boynton left for a while. Anyway, people keep leaving and keep coming back. So every time somebody says, "Oh, I'm interviewing," "Oh, when are you going back to Volition?" Like, no, not going back to Volition. Sorry. I physically went back and got to see Saints Row in the middle of development, but yeah, when I was there, Jim Boone, who had been around since, I think he was at THQ at the time of Red Faction PC, he was then in charge of the studio, and he was like, "So you want to come? You know, we got an open desk over here. You want to just come work for us?" I was like, "Nope, I'm just here to see the game. Thanks."